let's get on with registers. There are 32 main registers when it comes to the MIPS r3000 architecture, which are R0 to R32. Now, there are several other ones, special ones such as the low and high registers, and the coprocessor ones. I think there are some others. That's not really something I'm going to tackle in this video because I have no idea how those coprocessor registers work or what they're used for, and yeah, I've never actually had to use them in the 10 years that I've been hacking FNAF tactics. So those registers actually have proper names that is based off their function, their intended function anyway. And when it comes to my FFT hacking template spreadsheet, you can use either the register or the name. Note that if in regular instructions you won't be able to use low and high. Those actually have their own instructions to affect those registers. But otherwise, register R0 to R31, you can use them in very, very standard instructions just fine, or you can use those names right here. The PSX debugger, however, is only going to use R0 to R31. Now, what the intended function of each? Well, R0 is always 0. It doesn't matter if you try to write to it, it's always going to be 0, which can be very, very useful in some cases. R1 is something that is, at least in tactics, only used as a memory address, and you can always override it, unless you're really trying to save space in your routine and you're reusing the address that you stored in there, which is totally fine. But you can load addresses to that register. You can create it out of opcodes. You can just use it as a reference to load and store data. That's essentially all that it is used for, and ideally all that you should use it for. Now, beyond that, there is something I'm going to mention here, the must preserve. As you can see here, what must preserve mean is that once the routine jumps back to the routine that it called, there are certain values that are expected to have possibly changed and others that must not have changed. But you can get around with not overriding some of these values, which in this case is going to be R16 to R23. You can actually store those values to the stack and load them back right before the end of your routine. And this way, you will preserve the values of those registers. For everything else from R1 to R15, plus R24 and R25, you can just write whatever you want to them. But if you are actually injecting a hack into an existing routine, you still have to be wary of which registers you can use or not. But if you are creating your own routine, for example, like for a formula, then you can just use whatever you want, in any way that you want, for addresses or just calculating values and all of that fun stuff that we're going to be looking at in another video. So yeah, this is plenty of room to work with, and if it is somehow not enough, you still have all these other registers right here. Now I have to mention that R16 to R23 are going to be used when it comes to calling other routines inside of your own routine. As coding standards go, if you can use the other ones, R1, R15, and R24, R25, for whatever you want, that means other routines that you call inside of your own routine can also use those for whatever they want. They might not. They might only use like one or two, which is fine. But ideally, if you want to preserve a value, you should store it in R16 to R23 first before calling those routines. And we'll all get to that later. I'm just saying it right now, which you can use and which you can't. Now, there are some special registers that have defined functions that, like, I'm not going to lie, you should really stick to those functions unless you want to actually break the game. So, R26, R27 are reserved for kernel. I honestly have no idea what that is for. I don't know what the global pointer or the frame pointer are either. You should still not touch them. R29 is the stack pointer. The stack is a really nifty thing that starts at the end of RAM, and the PlayStation has 2 megabytes of RAM. And you can decrease that value at the start of your routine, like this. Like this one. I'm going to get to what each opcode means, but here it adds -24 to R29, which is our stack pointer. And this is at the very beginning of the routine. And right before jumping back to the previous routine, it adds 24 back. It's really important that you lower the stack by a certain amount and you increase it by the same exact value before you jump back to a previous routine. Otherwise, you're going to offset the stack in a way that it is going to instantly freeze the game. And what this is used for is just storing value temporarily. And when it comes to the scope of your own routine, that means that -24, that means you can store 24 bytes worth of data into the stack that you can use for this routine. Now, if you want to increase it to, say, 256 bytes, this is fine. This is going to work just fine. And it would be a bit unrealistic for you to actually require that many bytes, however, but it is definitely a way to use it. Though I will say that if you use too much data in the stack, eventually it's going to overflow onto the rest of RAM, and that would definitely break the game. So it's not like it's an unlimited resource, but you would have to intentionally try to break the game for you to use too much of the stack, essentially. The other meaningful register here is R31. R31 is used primarily for one instruction, which is jump and link. And what it does is, and I hate to actually mention those opcodes before actually making a video about them, but this is still really, really important to understand the function of that register. Like let's say here, jump and link that address, elemental strengthen. What this is going to do is jump to this address right here, and then it's going to store this value, which is 8 bytes later, into r31. So this is going to be our new r31. And as you can see here, store word and load word, it stores r31 to the stack and then loads it back before jumping back. This is really, really important because you want the game to actually remember which routine it needs to jump back to. So r31 being this right here, once it hits JRR31, which is jump register R31, in that routine, then it's going to just jump back here. Now, it's not the next instruction, and I'm going to tackle that later. You just have to remember for now that it's going to store the current address plus 8 bytes into R31 as a return address. That's pretty much it. There are two other registers I'm going to mention. The low and high registers, those are used for multiplication and division instructions because the results of those instructions are going to be 64-bit values, and it's going to be split into two different registers because the PlayStation is only a 32-bit console after all. And I know this doesn't really make sense so far, but that's going to be for the next video. So yeah, there is a lot of room for doing what you want when it comes to creating your own routines. And honestly, a lot of this stuff I just learned from Glenn, which is really, really good to know, and I wish I had known this before. That's also one of the reasons I'm actually making this video, is that I want everyone who is starting ASM hacking to learn from my mistakes and to know how to do things right in the first place. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm going to look into data types for the next video. See you!